In this video, we discuss 8 signs that you're winning the retirement money race. Coming up next on Holy Schmidt.
Holy Schmidt!
I was recently visiting my hometown of Chicago, and I caught up with a lifelong friend, someone I catch up with once or twice a year. And he told me that he felt like he had done all the right things, but he just wasn't ready for retirement, which was only a few months away at this point. So we started talking about how to tell. And I said, it's not one of the X rules out there. Those are just heuristics. And he said, X rule? What's an X rule? I said, 5X, 8X, 10X, 15X, your salary is what you should retire with. It's better than nothing, but it's like saying eat your vegetables and exercise regularly and you're going to live a long life. There's a little bit more to it than that. And by the way, as you know, there are people out there who don't exercise regularly or eat their vegetables and they live to be 100 years old. On the flip side, there are people who do all the right things and they don't make it to 70. And just like your health has regular metrics like high blood pressure, cholesterol, or diabetes, there are indicators for your financial life that have nothing to do with an X rule. And that's what we're going to talk about here. And just to put people who are watching this video at ease, virtually no one possesses all 8 of these, just like no one later in life anyway has a perfect health score, at least the vast majority of people don't. But the more, the better. All right, let's get into it. But before we do, please make sure you click the like button because YouTube uses the number of likes in a video to elevate the video in the search results, and I want to help as many people as possible. Let me begin by talking about one simple concept, and that's called invisible wealth. Now, when you talk about an attribute, an indicator of success or other in retirement, you're talking about something that's measurable. Invisible wealth is not measurable, and it's usually the opposite of what we're talking about. And basically, invisible wealth means avoiding the pain of not having something. And so throughout these examples, we're going to talk about invisible wealth. Just know that it's not measurable, but you know it when you see it. Point 1, if you can maintain your current lifestyle with the cash flow that you have coming in, you're probably winning the retirement money game. Now, what does that mean in practicality? First, it means that you can pay all of your bills comfortably every month because a lot of people in retirement actually can't. And along those same lines, it's important with this point that you don't have lifestyle creep, meaning you increase your spending simply because you can, and now that big cushion you had before becomes a small cushion. Point 2, if you don't think about money very often, you're probably winning the retirement money race. This represents a form of invisible wealth. The lack of stress when it comes to money can be incredibly beneficial, but it doesn't show up in your bank statement. Point 3 is that you're debt-free or well on your way to being debt-free. The average person in this country has debt. In fact, a lot of debt. And people carry debt for 10, 20, 30 years or longer. And as they approach retirement, the absence of debt is very powerful in comfort in retirement. The biggest one for most of us is, of course, our home. And the closer we get to retirement and the closer we get to paying off the mortgage, the bigger the value of that home and the bigger the invisible wealth of mental freedom comes from that home. Now, a lot of us throughout our adult life have to have a bigger home. It's practical to have a bigger home because we have children and they need to sleep somewhere. But as you get close to retirement, that home, particularly if it's close to being paid off, has a lot of value. And you can take that value and apply it to a smaller home. Most importantly, a fully paid off home is a form of invisible wealth. It doesn't necessarily show up in your cash flow, but it frees you mentally from the obligations of having a mortgage. Credit card debt is the next one. For people who pay off their credit cards, that's incredibly powerful. First, because the interest rate is so high that it is an anchor on your finances, both in actuality, because you have all of this big high interest rate debt, but in terms of the invisible wealth component that we talked about earlier. In fact, even more than your mortgage, paying off your credit card debt is job one, because even paying off a small amount of your credit card debt can have a dramatic impact on your cash flow because the interest rates are so high. The absence of student loan debt is also really powerful. Now, student loan debt is what's called good debt, meaning you take out a student loan and hopefully anyway, you get a job that can cover the cost of the debt and then a lot more. And your place in life, your economic station in life goes way up. But when you retire, you're no longer working. And so student loan debt becomes something that is more of an obligation than a benefit. And I know a lot of you know this already, but I'm going to point it out anyway. Your net worth is your total assets minus your total debt. If you have no debt, then it's just your total assets. And that's a really good feeling when you're just looking at your assets and those assets are untethered. They're not tied to debt. Point 4, if you have a healthy emergency fund, that is a good indication that you're winning the retirement money race. Having a healthy retirement fund means that you're protected from downside events. 3 months is good, 6 months is better. I had someone tell me that they had 3 years of emergency fund money saved. My response to them was, well, that's not really an emergency fund. It's an investment, and you should treat it as an investment. Point 5, if you have multiple income streams, that's a good indication that you're winning the retirement money race. Now, most people who watch this channel are either close to receiving Social Security or receive Social Security. Social Security represents about 40% of the average retiree's income. That means 60% comes from somewhere else. Now, also for many retirees, Social Security represents 100% of their retirement income, although that's a very Spartan lifestyle, but people do it. If you've arranged your life to have multiple streams of income in retirement, that's a good indication that you're winning the retirement money race. If you have a 401k, an IRA, or a Roth, that's additional money coming in. And believe me when I tell you, additional money spends a lot easier than required money when it comes to your life. And this is an important point to understand. Incremental income feels like freedom money because you don't rely on it for survival. So anytime you add incremental cash flow to the picture, that is a lifestyle upgrade. Here's something else to understand. Cash flow has a lot more value than net worth. If you have a big net worth, but that can't be converted into cash flow, well, it is something that is better than nothing, but it's not the same thing. If you have reliable monthly income streams, you may actually be richer than someone who has a big net worth, but can't monetize it. And when you have no debt and sensible spending, the picture of being richer than you think becomes very clear very quickly. If you're someone who has a pension, this is typically someone who worked in public service, although companies still offer a pension, some companies do anyway, that's an indication that you are winning the retirement money race. And if you have other income outside of what we talked about, like dividend income, for example, each additional layer of cash flow makes the previous layers of cash flow less and less necessary. And that's a good indication that you're winning the retirement money race. If you have royalty income, you wrote an ebook that sells on Amazon for $5,000 or $10,000 a year, or you're getting royalties from an oil and gas contract that you bought years ago. I don't know. Royalty income is not just for rock stars anymore. And if you have a side business, like you're good at coin collecting, for example, I've often thought that if I had more time, that would be something that would be really interesting because I love doing it. But also, it's pretty predictable if you know how to do it. You can buy low and sell high. There's enough data out there and enough training out there so that it's really not that difficult. But you need to be patient. Which brings me to my next point. Turning hobbies into reliable cash flow streams is one of the most overlooked indications that you might be winning the retirement money race. If you can monetize a passion project, you have what I call joy money, money that comes from something that you would be doing anyway. That's a win-win. Do you have a passion that you want to pursue outside of retirement, or if you're still working outside of your current job? If so, this might be a good cash flow generator for you. And that hobby income, it's a great feeling because it's incremental income, not necessary income for most people anyway. The next point is a low withdrawal rate from your retirement accounts. Now, what does that mean? Well, your retirement accounts generate a certain return. If you're withdrawing less from your retirement accounts than the retirement account is generating, well, that's a low withdrawal rate. And that means that you're continuing to build wealth even though you're using the assets to live day to day. That means 10, 20, 30 years from now, the cash flow that's being generated from those assets will grow incrementally, and you'll be in a really good position. Point 7, you have a financial target and it looks like you're going to hit that target. Let me explain. A lot of people have what's called a net worth target. They want to have a certain net worth by the time that they retire. Or they have a cash flow target. They want to have a consistent, predictable cash flow by the time they retire. Whatever the target is, most people set it at a very high level with the expectation that they may or may not get there. But if you look like you're going to hit your target, well, that's an indication that you might be winning the retirement money game. Finally, point 8, if you can help charities, friends, or family with your excess cash and you don't panic about it, well, that's a really good indication that you're winning the retirement money race. Now, I will point out, unfortunately, this is the case more often than not, people who build assets for 40, 50, 60 plus years, when their time comes and the assets are passed on, they aren't really used in the same manner in which the giver was expecting. Oftentimes they go to things like new cars, a vacation, a big party for friends and family, I don't know. But they're not used to maintain a high standard of living or invested wisely. They're spent very quickly oftentimes. The stuff that didn't really matter to you in your life becomes baubles in their life. So if you're worried about this, consider how you can set up a trust to somewhat mitigate this issue. You can't mitigate it perfectly, but you can go a long way to managing this even when you're not around. Next, if you're making significant charitable contributions, this is an indication that you might be winning the retirement money race. The reason is that when people spend their money, the way that they normally spend it is they spend it on themselves first, then on their family, and then the charity. That's usually the order. It's usually not the reverse, although you see that a lot on television. The reality is people take care of themselves and their family first, but if you can then give funds to charities, that's an indication that you're winning the retirement money game. Gang, there's a lot happening in the world right now as it relates to retirement, Social Security, and other aspects. So if you want to stay current on a lot of this, make sure that you click subscribe and turn on notifications so that you get alerted the next time I post a video. I post at least 2 times, sometimes 3 or even 4 times a week when there's a lot going on. Also, if you like this video, check out that video, The 6 Levels of Wealth in Retirement. This is Jeff Schmidt, and I will see you in that video right there.